Good evening. My name is Vincent Mendolia with the Fairfax County Division, and I want to welcome you all this evening to a meeting to discuss the Chantilly, Centerville, Vienna and Tysons bus service review. This meeting will cover information on 3 service alternatives and will allow everyone to provide feedback and ask questions. Before we begin, I would like to review some guidelines so that everyone can participate and get the most out of this session. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded on YouTube and shared on the county website. You are welcome to submit questions using the Q&A function in the WebEx window at any time, and we will do our best to get to all questions while also ensuring that we get to all participants. Please do not use the chat feature to submit your questions, as the Q&A function will send your question to all the administrators in this session and will help keep the questions organized and in one place. If you are on the phone, please hold your questions to the end. We will have instructions on how to ask questions at the conclusion of this presentation. I would now like to welcome Michael Felschow from the Fairfax County Department of Transportation to begin tonight's presentation. Michael?
Thank you, Vincent, and thank you everyone that took the time to participate and come out. Hopefully we can have a good conversation tonight. Hopefully everyone's having a good evening. We have a few slides I want to go over first. So what we're trying to do today is try to get input on some alternatives that we've developed for identifying ways to improve the transit system through the core of the county. That's Chantilly, Centerville, Vienna, up to Tysons. Now, we've done similar studies in other portions of the county, including Reston-Herndon and Franconia. So we've cut the county into several pieces, and we're taking our time to do deep analysis of each portion of the county. So our goal is to try to enhance the bus system within this area, gather public input, and evaluate the transit performance and determine future needs. The result is hopefully develop a proposed service that is much more efficient and effective, improved route design, and improves access and mobility. So where are we in the planning process? Well, we started back in the spring of 2020 with getting an understanding of the issues that are out there, and I'll go a little bit into that in a couple of minutes. But we took each route in the service area that we're studying, and we broke it down, looked at the number of riders, how long the bus takes to get from point A to point B, where the riders were getting on and off the buses. We broke each route down into its fundamental pieces. And then with the input that we received on county-wide information, we developed 3 alternatives, which we're going to present them here tonight and give you an opportunity over the next week or so to get into our online survey and make additional comments and give us additional information. So that's where we are tonight, starting our public outreach effort. Once we get all your feedback, we'll do a quantitative evaluation of the 3 alternatives, taking into account all the input that we get, and then we'll take that information and develop a preferred plan. A preferred plan will not be just one of these 3 alternatives. It will be a hybrid of the 3 alternatives, taking elements, the best elements, based on the comments we received from you and others tonight and over the next few weeks to make that preferred plan. After we create that preferred plan, we'll come back out to the public, hopefully in the spring of 2021. Hopefully by then we'll be able to do this in a physical format or actually come out to you instead of a virtual format that we have today. And we'll get additional input from you, the rider, and the community and the residents. We'll then take that input, make adjustments to the preferred plan, and bring that preferred plan to the board sometime the later half of next year. That will be part of our transit development plan, which we update every 5 years. So anything you see here tonight that you like or you think needs to be adjusted will most likely not be implemented for the next year, year and a half at the earliest. So some of the information that we have that we started with was we did a market survey throughout the entire county in the fall of 2018. We received over 2,600 respondents. And this market survey, which included 2 focus groups, tried to focus in on why people are not riding the transit system. So we looked at who's riding and who's not. And if they're not riding, why aren't they? And if they used to ride, why don't they? What are the factors? What are the barriers that cause them not to ride the system or to stop riding the system? Then there's the onboard survey. So we got on the buses and we interviewed about 2,500 individuals on the buses back in the summer of 2019. We asked them questions of where they're going to and from, and their demographic characteristics, and some trip characteristics, why they're taking the trip, where they're trying to go, and when. We also asked them, what would make it easier for you to ride the bus in the future and increase your ridership usage of the transit system? So we were able to take all that information and start to develop alternatives. We're going to have 2 rounds of online surveys and two rounds of public meetings through this process. The first round of public meeting and online presence is happening tonight. With the online survey was open last week and will continue to be open until December 9th. So what have we heard so far? We took everything that we learned to date and we put it into 4 areas of concern, or 4 areas of improvement: connectivity, faster travel, greater span of service, and increased frequency. So we started looking at connectivity, making sure that we design routes that actually get people to where they want to go in the fastest way that we can make them. And the 3 alternatives that we've created each solve these 4 areas of concern slightly differently. So what you're going to see once you go online and what you'll see tonight is routes and structures that are in some cases similar, in some cases they're not, and it's a sensitivity test. What do you like and what needs to be improved? So connectivity is all about the travel pattern. Are we matching places where people want to go to and from? Faster travel is reducing the unnecessary travel patterns within a bus route. Does it need to go in that circle? Does it need to meander off the road and come back again? Or should the route go straighter? The straighter the bus route is, the faster it is. But there's a counteract to that. The straighter we make the bus, maybe less people are able to access it. So we increase mobility, but decrease accessibility. So there's a trade-off. Then there's greater span of service and increased frequency. Greater span of service is the number of hours in a day and the days of the week that we actually operate. And increased frequency is how often does that bus come by. So in those 2 areas, we want to make sure that we're applying our limited resources to those areas and those portions of our community that truly need transit and make sure that they have the accessibility and mobility that they need. So I'm not going to get too far into the weeds on the existing system, but this is a very quick map of the existing system. But we're going to be looking at 33 routes that will span the area from Chantilly, Centerville, City of Fairfax, the town of Vienna, and all the way up to Tysons, and even as far as Langley. 31 of these routes are connector routes. And then there's the 3T and the 15K that are up in the Tysons area that are both metro bus routes that may, in the future, be discontinued by Metrobus. And we're looking at those as possible, taking those over, assuming them as part of the connector system. So I want to just go quickly into our O&D travel patterns. This came off of our onboard survey. And what we did here is these are heat maps. The darker the color, the more people getting on and off the buses. And as you can see, the very dark area around Tysons and Vienna, that's a transfer point. That was really where people were just getting on the buses and transferring. There wasn't really a significant destination point. Well, Tysons is both a origin and a destination point. And you can also see areas like Centerville and Washington, D.C., and even Chantilly as key areas of people using the transit system, getting on and getting off. So we have a lot of movement, people going along the I-66 corridor, US 50, and up into the Tysons area. So as I mentioned, we have three alternatives. The first alternative is based on the existing system, what we have out there today, with some modifications based on our existing transit development plan, which was approved back in 2016. Now then, that original plan, it made some assumptions of increasing resources. So we had to take some of those recommendations and modify them so that they would fit into a budget neutral forecast. Now, all three of these alternatives are budget neutral, and that basically means whatever resources we have today, that's what we're planning within. And alternative two is a transformation. We basically started with a new piece of paper and draw all new lines. And then the hybrid took the service area that is in alternative one and combined it with elements of alternative two, which was primarily some of the more regional routes that alternative two came up with. And once we get all your input, we will then start our line test, which we call our three-bucket analysis. And that's a quantitative approach. And these are the elements that go into that quantitative approach: transit propensity, travel time, average travel time, key locations, span of service factor, and frequency factor. Transit propensity basically identifies those areas of our portion of the county that we're studying that have a propensity or need for transit, maybe possibly even greater than other areas. So we want to make sure that individuals who need transit and can use transit and benefit from it, at a minimum, have access and mobility to transit. That includes low income, households with one or zero vehicles, minority households, seniors, and disabled. The average travel time, we took that information from our onboard survey, the 10 top origin and destinations from that onboard survey, and then we will assess each alternative and how individuals are able to get from those 10 origin and destination pairs, and take the average of that for each alternative. Now, with that, we will also look at whether they're going to use not only our buses, but other buses or Metrobus route. So it's not just on our system, people traveling across, it's all the systems that are in the area to get from the origin and destination. The next element is the key locations. These are pretty much destinations that we're looking at. So you can look at transit propensity, that's the origin, travel time, that's how long it's going to take you to get from point A to point B on average, and then key locations, which is the employment centers, schools, and that includes middle schools and high schools, colleges, hospitals, park and ride lots, metro rail stations, and recreational centers. And that's how we do that, is we take the routes in each one of the alternatives and basically just count up these activity centers and schools and hospitals within a quarter mile of each route within an alternative and just add it up. The span of service and frequency factors, these are scores. I mean, each route is given a score between 0 and 2.5. For span of service, the more hours of the day and more days of the week that the service operates, the higher the score. And for frequency, we look at peak hour. And we give it a score between 1 and 2.5. So the higher better the frequency is, the higher the score is. And these are used as weights against the transit propensity and key locations. And the reason why we do this is that in order to have a good transit system that is beneficial to the community, you need to make sure that not only does it operate with good hours throughout the day, but also a high level or the highest level of possible frequency that you can get. Otherwise, you end up with 60-minute frequencies spread across a large area. You might be able to connect to many people, but you really don't have the level of service necessary for people to need and to want to use the transit system. So let me go, before I drop in the map that details this first alternative, what we pretty much did with this alternative looks at coverage, maintaining the level of coverage. So you can see on this map before I pan into it, that pretty much all the routes that are out there today are going, this alternative says they're going to be there tomorrow. And what we did with this alternative is we adjusted the span of service and the frequency, and I'll get into that in a moment. So let me pull up the map of alternative 1. Hopefully everyone can see this. This is when starting the the Tysons area. And I'm right off the bat, I'm not going to go through every single route, because if we did that, we would have 80 routes to go through these 3 alternatives. I'm just going to do a few highlights. And for the Tysons area, the highlights is that Route 724 was truncated, so it doesn't actually go to West Park anymore. Now, I will caveat everything I'm about to say here, is these are sensitivity tests. Nothing you see here is written in stone, carved in concrete. There's a possibility there are going to be changes to everything that you see here, and that's why we're here tonight, to hear from you and start the evaluation process. So as you can see, this one route has been adjusted. We've also adjusted Route 461, 466, have been merged into a single route. Some of the frequencies of some of the shuttles along the Tysons has been adjusted. In this case, they have been actually go from about 17 minutes to 20 minutes to make them a little bit more consistent. We expanded Route 424 across the new bridge over to the McLean area. I'm going to go over to Centerville and Chantilly. The route structures are basically the same as they are today, but there is 2 new routes that I want to make point of, and one is Route 610, which is here. My cursor is going along it right now. This is a route that goes from Stone Road along 29 to the Monument. New park and ride lot facility that will be built in the next year or so, down to the Judicial Center and on to GMU. This was a route that was originally in the Transit Development Plan that was approved in 2016. And so this is something that we're trying to get the ability to make this connection that's missing right now. We also have another route, Route 660, which will run from Stone Road, Monument, over to Vienna, up to Tysons. And 660 will operate during peak hour only at 10-minute frequencies, also covering a linkage that doesn't exist very effectively today. Today, you have to go to Vienna and then take Route 463 up Maple in order to get to Tysons, or vice versa. In the future, you'll be able to get one of the park and ride lots, get on 660, and be able to get all the way to Tysons. So those are some of the highlights that I'd like to mention. Another highlight is another express route, 680. It will go from Monument multimodal facility that hasn't been built yet over to East Falls Church. And that's those routes, those express routes that I've just mentioned, those will possibly be funded with outside the Beltway toll revenue funding. In addition to that, we will also maintain Route 699, 698, and 697 that actually operate through this corridor. The next thing I'd like to talk about and make sure that everyone has, as you go onto our website, you will see these maps that I just presented, along with this graphic. And this is a very important graphic. This one single graphic shows you a lot of different information. And what it shows you is every single route with a bar across it that shows you how long during the day that route actually operates, and it's color-coded so that you can reference it, what's the frequency. So if I take route 422, which is up in the Tysons area, it operates from 6 o'clock in the morning to about 7 o'clock p.m. And that operates at 20-minute frequencies. If it's a short line like you see here on Route 432, you can see that it only operates during peak hour and operates at 40-minute frequencies. So I just really want to make sure everyone's clear on what we're asking you to do is when you get online and you start answering the questions that we have there, and there's slide questions, sensitivity questions. They go from disagree to neutral to strongly agree. And then there'll be an open box that you can actually make additional comments. So we're going to ask you questions about coverage, frequency, span of service, days of the week, and whether you agree or disagree with the way this alternative is. So what you have in alternative one, once again, alternative one attempts to maintain the coverage, but tries to adjust frequency and span of service so that we can make some improvements and possibly even adjust when and where, when throughout the day that there's service. So we might might truncate some span of service, decrease some frequency or increase frequency depending upon demand. And if we sum up what we have in alternative one, is you end up with about 5 routes on a weekday that operate greater than 15 minutes in service, 15 routes that operate 20 minutes or better, and that includes the 5 I just mentioned, 13 routes that operate all day, and only 3 routes that operate earlier than 5 a.m., and no routes that operate later than 10 p.m. Once again, this is a sensitivity test. So Saturday and Sunday service is about 14 routes on Saturday and 10 routes on Sunday. And about 5 routes will operate better than 30-minute frequency. So alternative 2. This alternative 2, as I said, was a transformation route. It took a completely different look at the transit system. And one of the reasons why we did that, and you'll notice right off the bat here that there's a lot less routes on this map and a lot less routes and colors of routes going along I-66. And one of the reasons is because right now we have a lot of routes that go through the neighborhoods, go through the community, and then they all go over to Tysons, over to Vienna. But we found by looking at the data where people are getting on and off the bus, is we found that a lot of people are actually just driving to the parking lot to get on the buses that go to Vienna and then on to the Metro Rail or wherever they need to go from that point. So instead of making every bus go all the way over to Vienna, we cut the lines and we said, let's make local bus routes that circulate through the community and connect to parking lots and major employment centers. And then let's make routes that just connect all those parking lots and the major hubs for transit like Vienna up to Tysons and down to Franconia. So we can make sure that those routes are operating at a high level of service. Those are your more regional routes. So I'm going to drop in a map right now, and hopefully everybody can see this is alternative 2, and you'll see right off the bat that there is some adjustments. I'm sorry, hold on one second. My computer is being a little odd. Well, there are some adjustments here. There are a couple of routes that actually, due to low ridership and testing that sensitivity once again, were removed for this alternative, and that includes route 724 and 432. We merged route 466 and 461 into a single route. We also merged route 467 and 462 into a single route. We also merged 422 into that with those other 2 routes. we actually also improved the frequency along Maple, and that's Route 463, up to 20-minute frequencies. And along with that, we were able to add in an express route that will operate on 10-minute frequencies from Stone Road through Stringfellow, the new multimodal facility, to Vienna up to Tysons, and that's the Route 660. It will have also a paired route with it, Route 662, that will run from Stone Road to Vienna during off-peak times. And that will operate on a 30-minute frequency. So all day long, you're going to be able to get from point A to, you're going to be able to get from the western portion of the study area all the way up to Tysons throughout the entire day. We also have another route, 670, that will run a limited stop service along US 50 on top of another route, so it's an overlay route, and that route will connect with the I-66 corridor over to Vienna, and then all the way down to Franconia. So anyone who lives up in the Chantilly area will be able to get all the way down to Franconia, take another route there, and maybe even get all the way down to the military bases with just a two-seat ride instead of taking a bus to Vienna, then a train, then the Blue Line, and then another bus. So we're hoping that can really improve connectivity. We have some significant regional connectivity that's part of the option with this alternative. We also have a new route, Route 468, that connects Vienna through Lawyers Lane up to Wheelie up in Reston. So there's another regional connection that's missing today. So this alternative, while it shrinks the service area down, it actually increases connectivity across the region and increases some of the frequency and spans of service. And I will show that through the next graphic, which is the same graphic, similar graphic that I showed you for alternative 1. For alternative 2, we have the same kind of situation, all the routes. Once again, there's less routes, but these routes actually operate a longer period of time. And we have 6 routes that operate better than 15-minute service, 13 routes that operate better than 20-minute service, 16 routes that operate, I'm sorry, I think I misspoke that. There are 6 routes that operate 15 minutes or better, 13 routes that operate 20 minutes or better, and 16 routes that operate all day long. Compare that to alternative 1, which only has 13 routes that operate during all day. So there is a significant difference there. And this is where you'll see the other significant difference. If you remember that alternative 1 had 3 routes and 0 routes that operated before or after 10 p.m. Alternative 2 has 12 routes that operate before 5 a.m. and 8 routes that operate after 10 p.m. So a significant improvement. That's even an improvement over what we have today, which is there's only 5 routes in these out of all these throughout the study area that only operate after 10 p.m. So you're getting a lot more on those routes that you do have, a lot more service. And on Saturday and Sunday, we end up with 17 routes on Saturday and 13 routes on Sunday, with 4 routes that actually operate better than 30-minute service. So once again, while the service area decreased, the span of service and the frequency increased on most of the routes. So it goes back to that sensitivity question we're asking you. What's important? And if you answer those questions for us, we'll be able to then modify these alternatives and make a hybrid that will possibly meet more of the needs of the community. So alternative 3, it says it's a hybrid. Basically what this alternative does is it attempts to try to keep the same service area, get rid of some of the duplications of routes, but add in some of the regional connectivity that was missing in alternative 1. So you'll end up having the connection up to Tysons and a connection down to Franconia. So I will go ahead and drop the map in so everyone can see that. And here's the map of alternative three. Sorry, run that again. So as you see here, there are a couple of differences between this map and alternative 1 and alternative 2. As you can see, Route 724 is back again, but this time it's a little bit larger, going all the way over to Highway 7 down to the Metro Rail Station and then back over to West Park. So it's a little bit larger. Route 467 is back again, but Route 422 has been replaced by realigning Route 462 and 467. We've merged Route 466 and 461 into a single route. So we made some adjustments. They're minor in some cases compared to alternative 1, but there are some other significant adjustments if you look throughout from one alternative to the other. Now, I will try to get my computer to get me over to Chantilly and Centerville area. And once again, we do have Route 660 operating along the entire length of I-66 through Vienna up to Tysons. And that route will operate on 10-minute frequencies during peak hour. We also have Route 670, but unlike in alternative 2, which operated along US 50 to I-66 and then down to Franconia, this will operate along US 28 to I-66 to Vienna, then to Franconia. And it was also a little bit different because it will only operate during peak hour, where on alternative 2, it operated all day. So slightly different alignment, slightly different level of service. We still have some of the same express bus routes that are in the other alternatives. That includes 697, 698, and 699. So I wanted to now jump over to the level of service table. And once again, it's the same graphic showing weekday, Saturday, and Sunday. And as you can see here, there's a lot of routes that actually operate during peak hour only. And if we can, I'll summarize this for you a little bit. Alternative 3 has 5 routes that actually operate better than 15-minute frequencies. It has 11 routes that operate 20 minutes, and that includes the 5 routes that operate on 15-minute frequencies. And it has 11 routes that operate all day. And remember, alternative 2 had 16 routes that operated all day, and alternative 1 had 13 routes that operated all day. And alternative 3 has 7 routes that operate earlier than 5 a.m. That's better than alternative 1, but not as good as alternative 2. And only has 5 routes that operate later than 10 p.m. And that's not as good as alternative 2, but better than alternative 1. And then for Saturday and Sunday service, it's very close to the existing levels of service we have today. We have 13 routes on Saturday and 10 routes on Sunday, with 2 routes operating better than 30 minutes. Now, the difference there between alternative 1 and alternative 2 is that we had alternative 1 had 5 routes operating better than 30-minute frequency, with 4 routes operating better than 30-minute frequencies for alternative 2. So alternative 3 only has 2 routes operating better than 30-minute frequencies. So we were able to maintain some coverage, got a little bit improvement in terms of span of service, but we also had to decrease some span of service and frequency on the weekends. So once again, it's that trade-off. We can improve regional connectivity, but we would have to give up something else. Maybe it would have to be weekend service for more regional connectivity. Alternative 2 says, I will give you more frequency and more span of service, but I'm also going to reduce the coverage and focus primarily on those areas that have the highest demand, the highest existing demand for transit. Alternative 1 says, I'm going to give you everything that you have today in terms of coverage, but in order to make some improvements, I will reduce some span of service and shift span of service around during the day. So going on to next steps is that we went around to many of the board members, had one-on-one meetings with them for those board members' districts that cross into the study zone. We're conducting this public outreach effort today and throughout this week, and hopefully you'll have an opportunity to get online, go ahead and answer the questions that we have so we can get your input now up till December 9th, I believe it is. And then we're going to take that information, create a preferred plan, and bring that back out to the public where you'll have an opportunity to make more comments on it. We will take those comments, make additional adjustments, and I'd like to just say that our team looked at over 300 comments as we did the same type of study up in Reston Herndon, and we made a lot of different little minor adjustments to the services that we had put in the preferred plan based on the public comment that we received. So we do listen, we do hear it, we read every single comment, and then we identify whether we can afford to do that change or not. Any comment that possibly we can't do because this is a budget neutral situation, we are going to take those comments and we're going to put them in our transit development plan, which is a longer term 5 to 10 year range plan that we'll be able to hopefully find the resources to possibly make that improvement. This, unlike in the Reston Herndon, which is going to be implemented due to a lot sooner due to the Silver Line Metro Rail line, this will go into the transit development plan or as part of that planning process, which will go to the board for approval in the latter half of next year. And then once that document has been approved, then we'll begin implementation. And so while we have a public involvement process for this planning process that we're doing here today, the transit development plan will have its own public involvement process. So you'll have another opportunity to see how these things are all working out. And then once it's all approved by the board, every service change has its own additional public outreach efforts. So there's 3 levels of public outreach efforts before anything actually gets on the street and it actually is implemented. So there's lots of opportunities to hear you and make the adjustments that we need. But right now, these adjustments are budget neutral. And with that, I'll go into the last slide, which basically is how can you give us your input? As I mentioned several times, there is an online survey that will be open until December 9th. That's a Wednesday. You can go to the website, which is at fairfaxcounty.gov, connector, CCVT, bus service review. Email us at fairfaxconnector@fairfaxcounty.gov. You can call us at 703-339-7200, or you can mail us at Fairfax County Department of Transportation, Transit Planning, Public Comment, 4050 Legato Road, Suite 400, Fairfax, Virginia, 22033. And at this point, I will hand it back to Vincent, and I'm sure there are some questions.
Thank you very much, Michael. As Michael said, we'd now like to open the meeting for a few questions. Just as a reminder, please use the Q&A function to type your question for the moderators to read aloud. Again, please do not use the chat feature to ask questions or to comment. If you are joining us by phone, please push *3 to raise your hand to ask a question. When it is your turn, the moderator will call on you to ask your question, and after you have finished, please push *3 again to lower your hand. I will go into our questions. One of our earliest questions was regarding the market surveys. I would just like to address the individual who had asked that question. Those 2018 market surveys are not currently available on our website. However, with the email address that you have provided when you signed up, one of our staff will reach out to you directly and will work to figure out a way to get you that information. Along those lines, we also have another question regarding our Reston and Herndon outreach. And that question is, have we done all of the work regarding Reston and Herndon already?
Well, that is on our final phases of development at this point in time. We went through 3 public outreach efforts, and we gathered, same as we're doing here. We had an early alternatives analysis approach. We brought it back out to the public for the preferred. Actually, we did an early, what do we hear from you? What do you want? And then we did an alternatives analysis approach, and then we brought the preferred plan out. And so where we're at the point right now is finally taking all that input, which is about 1,700 comments we've received over the life of the study. The last piece was about 300 comments or so that we were able to refine the plan, and now we're about to move forward. Implementation next year, probably mid of next year, depending upon when the Silver Line is actually implemented. Now, we're going to keep the door open. When I mean keep the door open, we're going to be watching the system. So if you see something as the system is implemented, there's the flexibility to change it as we go along. I had this question, someone came to me earlier in that study and said, well, what if we need to change something? I said, well, it's a great thing about buses is that they are rubber wheel vehicles. We can make changes. So we're hoping that while we're implementing it, we probably won't get everything perfect the first time around. With your input, we hope to make changes 6, 8, 12 months down the road, find out what those adjustments are, tweak the system, and then we'll go ahead and make those adjustments. And we'll continue to look at it. Our team looks at every single bus route on a monthly and quarterly basis to constantly look at to see where we need to make adjustments. So the door is always open for adjustments. It's not closed. We don't just put a plan out there and then sit on it for 20 years. We're always looking for input.
Thank you. Another question that we have, was there studies of major commuting behaviors traveling from work and vice versa?
Yes, as part of the early on, we said we did, I had that bar that I showed early on, which says understanding the issues and understanding the system. What we did was we took a look at not only our boardings and the linings, but where people are getting on and off the buses, because every one of our buses, I call them smart buses. They count everybody getting on the buses. We know how the speed of the bus. We know how many people got on the bus at a certain time of day. So the buses know where they are. They have GPS. They know where they are on planet Earth. So we're able to gather all that information and identify where people are going to and from. And that's some of that heat map that we showed you earlier. In addition to that, we also had, we looked at the regional model from MCOG. The Council of Governments runs a model that looks at, and they do surveys every so many years, travel diary surveys. And we took that information to identify origin and destinations greater than just those that got on the bus. So we looked at it in as a regional sense, and we looked at it as people who are actually getting on and off our buses. So we have multiple layers of what we call desired lines, where people are trying to get to and from.
Okay. Next question. Will the new routes only originate at the Stone Road Park and Ride, or will they continue to make stops like they do now? Park and Ride on 29, United Centerville Methodist Church, etc.
That's a very good question, and that's what we want to hear from you. We have 3 alternatives. Each alternative tries to address those questions a little bit differently. Alternative 2 attempts to break the link between circulator buses and feeder buses versus regional buses. Alternative 1 maintains those connections, but changes the frequency and spans of service. So the answer right now is multi-level. Right now, it all depends on where the study goes to. We're going to take the information that you're providing today as that's something that you would like to continue to have. So we want to make sure that we continue to do that. In addition to that, I'd like to add in that as we did 2 other studies already, one down in Franconia, one up in Reston Herndon, and I told many people I had public meetings with is that if you get a bus ride today, I want to make sure that you get a bus ride tomorrow. So we're going to take a look at all the bus stops as when we finally get to a preferred plan, which is we're not there yet, and say, okay, what bus stops are we not serving? Are those bus stops actually being utilized? If they're not being utilized, that's one thing. If they are being utilized, that's a different thing. We need to make sure that person is able to get on the bus and get to where they need to go. And so to make a very long answer longer, we were taking a look at the service down in Franconia, and we noticed that the preferred plan that we were about to select, it was alternative 3, in fact, actually only covered about 70% of all the bus stops. And we said, that's not good enough. So even though it did very well quantitatively, alternative 2 was actually much better because it was very close in terms of scoring quantitatively, but it actually had much better coverage. So we're going to be looking at coverage, and we're going to be looking at connectivity as we move forward.
Thank you. Our next question. Sorry, everything's scrolling. Centerville and Chantilly need to adjust route of supporting the routes by adding more routes. I believe that might be referring to the current situation, but I'm not sure. If the individual could provide a little more feedback, that might help. But Michael, is there anything that you have to say about how the coverage in Chantilly and Centerville will be affected in some of the plans that we have shown this evening?
Well, out of the 3 alternatives, as you probably have heard me say, alternative 2 actually backs off on coverage. While it maintains certain routes like Route 630, 631, and several other routes, but it really reduces the number of routes that are out there, and simply because a lot of those routes that are presently out there have very low ridership. So we're cutting back that alternative. It's not to say that that alternative is going to be the alternative that moves forward. That alternative says, where can we apply our limited resources to get the biggest return on our dollar and return on resources, put the resources where the people are. And that's what that alternative is saying. Alternative 1 is saying, don't change that, keep that. Keep the coverage, maintain that. Now, adding additional routes without taking anything away because we're using a budget neutral situation would be difficult to do. We can't add more routes without reducing either frequency or span of service or reducing service in another portion of the study area. So that would be the difficult part. We actually added a new route in alternative 1 and 3 for Route 610. That was a new route for alternative 1 and 3. So there was a new route added. Also, alternative, the preferred plan for Reston Herndon actually adds a new route that intersects going straight through Chantilly and Centerville, and that's Route 901. So there is a new route that actually is implemented, and Franconia adds a 3rd route in, and that's Route 313, that comes up from the south and intersects into this area and links to the GMU, the judicial area, and then all the way up to the government center and Fair Oaks Mall. So there's some baseline other studies that are actually adding new services to this area over and above what we're doing in this study directly.
Thank you, Michael. That was actually going to be one of the next questions. One of our attendees this evening had asked the question, is there a way to add a possible cross-country Fairfax Connector route in the future? And I believe that you have just listed those several routes, the 901, the 313, in addition to our existing 401 and 402.
Okay.
We have a question. How will this impact Route 50, meaning the road, when 650 and 651 and 652 make a change to 651 and 670?
So what you're talking about is moving from what we have today to alternative 2. Once again, this is alternative 2 is not, we don't know if alternative 2 is going to be the plan. It might be something else. But what happens is right now in alternative, the existing situation, alternative Route 650 operates on 50-minute frequencies, while Route 651 and 652 operate during peak hour at about 35-minute frequencies. So 650 operates 50-minute frequencies in the off-peak. Alternative 2 changes that, and it says Route 651, which would replace those other routes, would operate 30-minute frequencies during peak and 60-minute during off-peak. And then you would have another route, Route 670, which would be a limited express service operating at 15-minute frequencies during peak and 30-minute during off-peak. So you end up at key locations along that US 50 with basically 15 to 30-minute frequencies almost the entire day. So it actually, for alternative 2, it actually is an improvement over alternative 1. Now, alternative 3 is a little bit different in that it actually makes a different, a slightly different case. It says Route 650 will go from 50-minute frequency to 40-minute frequency, so that's an improvement during the off-peak. And then Route 651 and 652 will go from about 35-minute frequencies to 30-minute frequencies. And if we staggered those two routes the correct way, we end up with 15-minute frequencies during peak. So there's a real tough choice someone will have to make between those connectivity. Do I want to have regional connection that brings me all the way over to Vienna and all the way down to Franconia, like an alternative 2? Or do I want alternative 3 that gives me 30-minute frequencies on an individual route? And if you're at the right place when we schedule this correctly, I could get 15-minute frequencies. Alternative 1 gives you 15-minute frequencies and maybe even 10-minute frequencies along that corridor. So the thing I want to stress is that while alternative 1 and 3 look like they have a lot of routes, a lot of those routes don't operate all day. And that's a crucial thing. And that's one of the reasons why I went through that list of routes, and I'll just do it one more time. For all day service, alternative 1 has 13 routes. Alternative 2 has 16 routes. And alternative 3 has 11 routes. What do we have today? We have 11 routes. So we are seeing a lot of our increase in ridership pre-COVID in the midday time period. Actually not during the peaks, but during the midday. So alternative actually 1 and 2 actually addresses those a little bit better along those key corridors than maybe alternative 3 does.
We have a question that came in early in our conversation while you were presenting. So perhaps the attendee, once they hear the question, may be able to provide a little bit of follow-up, or you, Michael, might know what our question is referring to. The question is, why from Monument to East Falls specifically? So I believe there's probably something early on in your presentation, if you can recall. Also, if our attendee has a little more information that they might be able to provide us, that might help you examine exactly which route might be in question, or which
That's actually a good question, because that's Route 680, and through all three alternatives, that's one of the express routes that are possibly going to be funded by outside the tollway funding. The VDOT, along with the Department of Rail and Public Transit, did a study several years ago and identified that as a possible good route that could be implemented. So that's what we did. We went to that study and we pulled those routes out of that study and we put them into the alternative 1, 2, and 3 for a sensitivity test. Do you want this route? Would this be a good route for you? And if we don't get a lot of feedback and people don't say, hey, we really don't care to go to East Falls Church, we want to go someplace else, then we're going to be able to go back to VDOT and the Department of Rail and Public Transportation and say, can you change the limits on this route that you've identified in your study that we could get funding for? Because it doesn't really make any difference anymore, because this study was done a few years ago. Things have changed. But right now, that's where the termini was actually developed by a different study that we're putting into these alternatives. And that doesn't mean that has to be the termini. It just means that's the termini that we got from a different study. Just like Route 610 and Alternative 1 and 3, that termini that's in that's Route 610, Stone Road, over to GMU, came out of a study that was done 4 or 5 years ago. Things change. People move. The community moves around. Before COVID, we were in a vibrant community that had a lot of growth. We're still in a vibrant community. And so things have to change. So if that's not something that people are interested, we can always make the adjustments. And that's why we're having these conversations. That's why we're getting the opportunity to make these comments, go online, tell us, 680, no, I need that to go to West Falls Church. I need that to go to Roslyn. I need that to go down to the State Department in DC. That's what we want to hear from you.
Okay. Where was that? Got quite a few in here. Scroll back up. Here's a question. Will survey respondents be able to comment on each route in this survey individually, I'm assuming? And can results be saved to come back later?
That's a good question. Most of the analysis, if I remember correctly, the survey is done more on a holistic approach than on an individual route. But you can go into the survey. There's boxes that you can go in and you can type in that, whatever you want to type in. Route 610, I like it, I don't like it. Whatever you want, you can go through and do that. The reason why we changed from what we had prior in the other studies is that we had it go by route at one point, and we got a lot of feedback that it was too cumbersome for people and it was too difficult and took too much time, and you had to go back and forth between the maps and the tables too much, and it was just too much. So we tried to make it a little bit easier and give a little bit more open comment period that you can go in and you can type in and answer your question. Now to the question, and maybe Vincent, you know this more than I do, or Kayla, who's in the background someplace, the marketing team, I do not believe you can save and then go back. I don't believe you can do that, correct?
Well, it's not necessarily a save function. The surveys are provided and we work with SurveyMonkey. So you don't wind up clearing your full history and all of your unique identifier. If you were to just log out of the survey and go back in, would still take you back to the place that you'd left off. If you go and clear all of your browser history, I believe then you might lose all of the progress that you had made.
Okay. Thank you.
We have another question. What will be the total budget of Fairfax Connector alternatives 1, 2, and 3?
What will be the budget?
Yes. I would assume it's budget impact. I don't know if it's combined.
Well, let's just put it this way. I'm not going to get into the details of the dollar amounts, but whatever we're doing today we're working what we call revenue hours, the hours that we use to operate a bus. And let's just, I don't have the exact number in front of me right now, but I'll just say, for example, let's say it's 170,000 hours a year, for example. That is our budget, 170,000 revenue hours a year. Do we go over that? Do we go under that? What we're trying to do is not go over that. That's how we're doing. We're calling it budget neutral because whatever we have in terms of level of service today, in terms of hours of operation, that's the number we're staying with through this study. So each one of these alternatives has the same budget hours, and that way one doesn't get an advantage over another.
See, we do have a comment. One of our attendees is requesting better connectivity to shopping centers. They'd like to be able to ride one bus from Walmart and Wegmans in Chantilly.
Okay, oh, that's what we're here to hear, and we'll I have several team members that are listening right now. They're going to be marking that down. If I had a whiteboard, if we were in a public meeting, we'd have a flip chart and we'd be writing that down right now. And so we're going to make sure that we write that comment down. And as we move forward, we're going to make sure that we can look at that and see if that can happen. I had the exact same thing happen to us when we were up in Reston Herndon. I had an individual come to me and say, we're senior citizens. We want to get from Harbor House over to Eldon Street where the shopping centers are. We need to make that happen. That's one of the that is exactly what we did, and that's exactly what we made sure happened. So comments like that, that's exactly what we were hoping for, and that we could get, so we can start when we get to the preferred plan. We can start modifying things and making sure that we make routes that actually meet your needs.
Well, along those lines, we do have a similar comment. One of the attendees had said that we should have an express bus that goes to Tysons.
And all three alternatives does have an express bus that goes to Tysons. That's Route 660. It goes from Stone Road Park and Ride Lot out there to Stringfellow to Monument, the new Monument Park and Ride Lot facility, over to Vienna, up to Tysons. And each one of these alternatives, it runs between a 10 and 15-minute frequency. So each alternative does the frequency a little bit different and the span of service a little bit different, but each one of them has that in their planning. So each one contains that one route that is an express service along I-66 to Tysons.
There's a question here. It said, why can't all of the alternatives, that word is hard for me this evening, be combined or not?
Why can't they be all combined? Well, if you look at it a couple of different ways, if we combine them all into one giant system, we would end up with a much higher budget than you would have. You would actually triple everything. And that wouldn't really be very good. It would be a very cumbersome and almost impossible way to, we couldn't afford it, simply that way. The other way is what we're going to do is each one of these alternatives, we're going to, based on your input through the survey and through meetings like this, we're going to take your input and along with the quantitative analysis, the 3-bucket system that I talked about earlier, with the transit propensity, the travel time, and the key locations, and we're going to start taking elements from each one of these that are the best and combine them into one alternative. So we're not quite there yet. That's what we're here today, to start that process and say, hey, what would work best for you? And then we pull that out. I call it a la carte planning. You know, what's the best thing that you want to do? Take those best pieces and put them in front of you, and that becomes the preferred plan. And that's what we'll come back with the next time. and then you get to make comment on that, and that way we start dialing in on what will work the best for you.
Okay. Let's see other questions that we have in here. Hang on a moment. We've got quite a few, so I'm just trying to go through to make sure that we capture as many as we.
So while you're doing that, Vincent, I'll just once again say that the online survey is a key tool for us to hear from you. These meetings are obviously very important to us. We're getting information, your concerns, your issues. We get a lot of input from those online surveys, and we do take a look at every single comment. We categorize them, and we identify how we can make that happen. So it's very crucial that you take the opportunity, if you have the opportunity, to go in and fill out that survey. I took it myself. It's pretty quick and pretty easy to use. Hopefully you'll find the same.
And let me see.
Anything else, Vincent?
We do have a few. I'm just trying to go through because there were several, and I just wanted to make sure that we hit all of the attendees that are asking questions this evening, just to make sure everything is even throughout. Regarding our Reston and Herndon survey, one of the attendees was just asking when had that Reston and Herndon survey been done? Was it 2019, 2020, 2008? Also, where can they find the details? Even if they can't comment, they would like to be able to at least read that information.
I'm talking about the results of the survey? Or
I believe so.
The results of the plan. The results of the survey, we do not have those. I do not believe they're online, but maybe we can get the information from this individual, their contact information, and we can provide that information to them. It was all converted into a quantitative approach. So we scored everything and we brought it out. Once again, there were two levels of surveys that were conducted. First, there was an alternatives analysis survey that we're doing here today. And then there was a final preferred plan survey. As I said, we get about 300 respondents, about a little over 200 comments that we went through for each and every single one. We didn't put that back out on the web, but we do plan on taking that those responses that we got in an evaluation, and that will become part of, we will document that, I believe, as part of our transit development plan. But obviously that's going to be in a while from now. But if this individual needs to see that information, we can always get that information to them or talk to them offline a little bit more about it.
Okay. And the final preferred plan that you and your staff had created is available on our website at fairfaxconnector.com. Just like this CCVT bus service review, you can find it at the Reston and Herndon page. If for some reason you have any difficulty, certainly reach out to us and we'll be able to make sure that we can get that information to you.
In addition to that, the Franconia plan is out there too. So all three plans are out there today that you can take a look at. They're all in different stages of development. The Reston Herndon is further along. The Franconia has just finished up its preferred plan evaluation with public comment, and this one has just started the planning process. So it's trailing a little bit behind, but that was in design. So we're phasing them. This is a phased planning approach.
Okay. Let me see. One of the attendees had mentioned that they were having a little bit of difficulty with our bus tracker app. Said the bus route text messaging stop ID next bus in this region doesn't work properly. on some routes. Tried to call them in, but the people at the call center refused, saying that the stop ID isn't valid. Would you like to take it, or should I try to answer it?
Well, it's not my area of expertise, but if you can provide us or call us or send us an email, we can try to follow up with you and find out exactly what is going on. The call center is there to help you. And so I want to make sure that they are helping people the way they should be helping them. So if we can get more information from you, we can circle back with you. We have an individual that works on our team, Florida. She can, we can try to get your information off to her, and she can circle back with you and find out what exactly is the problem and how we can address it.
I'd also like to just follow up on that. The attendee had mentioned NextBus. I just wanted to clarify that NextBus is the system that is used by WMATA and Metrobus. We have our own system. It's called our bus tracker system. Sometimes you might find that we have shared stops with Metrobuses. So Metrobus stop IDs tend to be longer. I believe they're usually about 6 or 7 digits. Currently, all of our stop IDs in our system more than 4. So hopefully we can solve this. It might be just an issue that I don't know if the attendee had reached out to WMATA's customer service and provide them with one of our IDs or vice versa. So those two systems are separate from each other. So their NextBus ID system doesn't have our information, and our system doesn't have the Metrobus IDs. They are completely separate with 2 different ways of accessing that real-time information.
Okay.
Okay. Well, the attendee did follow up and said it was. As Michael said, the email that you see, our Fairfax Connector at fairfaxcounty.gov, that is our customer service email. That comes directly inside to our staff. And if you can provide us with those stop IDs that you had tried putting into the system that didn't work, that will help us to identify where there might be something happening in the system. Everything is technological, and sometimes the system might have a little hiccup, and we hope that's what it was. But we'll certainly look into it, and we'll make sure that if you've provided us with email, we will get that to you. We did just want to follow up to see if there was any attendees that have called into our phone line this evening who would like to ask any questions for the presentation. Remember, if you are on the phone, you just simply hit *3 to raise your hand, and that will notify us that you do have a question. And once we recognize you, you'll be able to ask your question. Okay. Well, we did just get another question. What happens once Metrobus gets eliminated? Will Fairfax Connector step in on the routes to replace Metrobus?
That's an interesting question. And I'm not sure if that's probably a whole nother meeting. So at this point, let's just put that on the board of concerns. Can't really address it right now because we don't really know what's going to happen with WMATA. You know, they are a regional provider across the entire system. They also have the Metro Rail system. So at this point in time, we'll just put that in as a comment and a concern, and we'll have to continue to look and work with WMATA and see what's going to happen as they move forward with their issues and concerns. Hopefully after COVID-19, the world will move back to a more normalized world. We can only hope, and we will continue to work with our other partners throughout the region. And I wish I had a better answer, but at this point in time, we're sort of a wait and see what's going to happen.
Okay. Well, seems that we really don't have too many more questions coming in that are specific for what we have gathered here today to talk about the Centerville, Chantilly, Vienna and Tysons bus service review. Any questions that may have been submitted that we might not have gotten to, we will reach out to you. We want to thank everyone that has come to this meeting this evening. Just as a reminder, a recording of this meeting will be available on the Centerville, Chantilly, Vienna, Tysons service review webpage at fairfaxconnector.com in about a day or so. As I mentioned, any questions that we didn't get to tonight, we'll respond to you directly. If you did not get a chance to provide your feedback or would prefer to submit your feedback online, please visit the Centerville, Chantilly, Vienna, Tysons bus service review webpage and fill out the survey. And on the screen there, you see it, fairfaxcounty.gov/connector/CCVT bus service review. You can always go directly to fairfaxconnector.com, and there are links on that front page where you can click, and that will take you to the survey. If you'd like, once you do that, you go there and you can fill out the survey as we've discussed this evening. You can also email your comments to Fairfax Connector at fairfaxcounty.gov. Or if you'd like, you can call us at 703-339-7200, TTY number 703-339-1608. Or we also accept comments via standard mail. And the mail is right there up on the screen. It's 4050 Legato Road, Fairfax, Virginia, Suite 400, and the zip code is 22033. My apologies, I just had a little freeze up on my computer here. And most importantly, comments will be accepted through Wednesday, December 9th, 2020. Joining us this evening. Stay well, stay safe, and we hope to hear from you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.